Don't be jealous, it's just a date. Those were her exact words. No lead up, no explanation, just that sentence thrown at me like a brick through a window. She was standing by the door, casually twisting her hair into a bun, as if she wasn't casually detonating our entire marriage in the middle of a Tuesday evening. I laughed at first. A hollow, stupid laugh because I thought, surely, this is some weird joke. But Felicity wasn't smiling. She didn't even glance at me. She just checked her lipstick in the mirror, like I wasn't even there, like I wasn't her husband, but some background noise. Something inside me cracked right there. I dropped the glass of water I was holding, and it didn't even shatter, just rolled across the counter, spilling everywhere, which somehow made me feel more pathetic. My voice sounded weak when I said, "Are you serious?" She finally looked at me. God, the way she looked at me, like I was being unreasonable for even asking. Yes, Howard. A date. Don't be jealous. You're always overthinking everything. I felt my ears burning. Overthinking? My wife was about to walk out the door to meet another man, and I was overthinking? Something in me, something I didn't know I had, just snapped. Fine, I said. Have fun, but I hope he doesn't mind that I'm seeing someone too. The words were out before I even processed them. And the way her face changed, it was like I had just told her a secret she never wanted to know. She froze, her lipstick still in hand, staring at me like I'd turned into someone else. That's when I realized something terrifying. She wasn't worried about me being jealous. She was worried because I wasn't supposed to have options. She didn't move. For a full 10 seconds, Felicity just stood there, frozen in the hallway with her lipstick halfway back into her purse. Her eyes flicked to me like she didn't recognize who I was. Then came the smile, small, sharp, and absolutely fake. You're kidding, she said, her voice softer than usual, but with that cutting edge I've come to dread. I leaned on the counter, trying to steady my hands. Yeah, sure, I'm kidding, I said, but my tone betrayed me. I wasn't kidding, not really. In that moment, I wanted her to believe I could have someone else waiting for me. The way her jaw tightened told me that the thought had landed, and it stung. Howard, don't be ridiculous, she snapped, like I was a child acting out. You? Dating someone? When would you even have the time? And there it was. That look, that smirk I used to find charming, but now felt like a knife twisting in my ribs. Maybe it was the way she dismissed me, like I was harmless. Or maybe it was the fact that she was dressed like she was going to seduce the devil himself. But something in me decided that I wouldn't just sit back this time. You'd be surprised what I've been doing while you're working late, I shot back. The words tasted bitter as they left my mouth, but I didn't regret them. Not for a second. Her face changed instantly. It wasn't just surprise. There was something else in her eyes. Fear? Anger? Maybe both. She stepped closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor like gunshots. What's that supposed to mean? I wanted to tell her everything I'd been thinking for months. How I'd noticed the late-night texts she always tilted her phone away for, the mysterious perfume that wasn't hers on her jacket, the sudden girls' nights that never used to exist. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile I hadn't given her in years, and said, "Guess you'll have to figure it out." The silence that followed was thick. She hated not being in control, and I could see her scrambling for a response, for something to break the tension. That's when her phone buzzed. She snatched it off the table, but not before I caught a glimpse of the name flashing on the screen. A name I didn't recognize. A man's name. My chest tightened. "Your date's waiting," I said, almost choking on the words. Her hand trembled as she stuffed the phone into her purse. For the first time, she looked nervous. And that scared me more than anything. She left without another word. No kiss on the cheek, no playful jab, nothing. Just the sound of the door clicking shut like a gunshot in an empty room. I stood there for a minute, staring at the door, my heart pounding in my chest. Every rational part of me screamed to let it go, to just sit back down, pour a drink, and pretend this wasn't happening. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Something in me had shifted the moment I saw that name on her phone, a name I'd never seen, but one that had a kind of weight. I felt it in my gut. I grabbed my jacket and keys. No plan, no second thought. My car roared to life like it had been waiting for this moment too. The streets were empty, quiet, but I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as I tailed her. It didn't take long to find her, a flash of her black dress as she got into a rideshare at the corner. She didn't see me. I followed. The ride led us to the edge of town, past the neighborhoods we knew, into the kind of streets where streetlights are dim and everything feels just slightly off. Her car stopped in front of a small restaurant I didn't recognize, one of those dimly lit, intimate places that scream secrecy. My stomach tightened as I parked a few cars back, watching her step out. She was smiling. Not her usual smile, but that nervous, excited one she used to have when we first started dating. I felt sick. Then I saw him, the man waiting at the entrance. He wasn't someone I knew. Tall, dark hair, expensive jacket, and a posture that screamed confidence. He kissed her cheek like it wasn't the first time. I swear, for a second, I couldn't breathe. I sat there gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I should have left right there. I should have turned the car around and gone home. But I didn't. I waited. I watched them go inside. And as I sat there, this strange mix of anger and curiosity took over. Who was he? How long had this been happening? And this one hurt the most. What did he have that I didn't? After 20 minutes of sitting in my car like a creep, I couldn't take it anymore. I got out. The restaurant's front windows were tinted, but not completely. I could see them sitting at a table near the corner. She was leaning in close, smiling, laughing in a way I hadn't seen in months. I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to drag her out and scream every hurtful thing I'd swallowed over the past year. But something told me to wait, to watch, to figure out what this really was before I burned everything down. And that's when I saw it, the envelope. The man slid a small envelope across the table to her. Felicity looked around, almost like she was checking to see if someone was watching, and then quickly tucked it into her purse. That wasn't romantic. That wasn't a date gesture. That was something else. Something worse. I backed away from the window, my mind spinning. I needed answers. I needed to know who this man was, and what the hell was in that envelope. I stood outside that restaurant for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of rain on concrete, but I didn't feel any of it. My mind was locked on that envelope. It wasn't just the way she took it, like it was something fragile, dangerous even, but the way the man slid it across the table without a word, like they'd done this before. It didn't feel like romance. It felt like a transaction. I paced by my car, every muscle in my body screaming for me to do something, anything. My heart said to march in there, confront them both, demand answers. But my brain whispered that I was missing something bigger. And deep down, I knew it was right. If I went in there like a jealous fool, I'd leave with nothing but humiliation. I needed to be smarter. So I waited. 45 painful minutes later, they emerged. She was laughing at something he said, her hand lightly brushing his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. I clenched my fists so hard I felt my nails dig into my palms. But I didn't move. I watched as they said their goodbyes. He didn't kiss her this time, just a lingering look, a nod, and then he walked away toward a black car parked across the street. Felicity pulled out her phone, her smile fading instantly, and called for another rideshare. She looked over her shoulder once, like she was expecting someone to be there. I ducked behind my car, my heart thundering in my chest. As her rideshare pulled away, I made a decision. I wasn't going to follow her home, there was no point, but I was going to follow him. His car wasn't hard to track. I tailed him through winding streets until he stopped in front of a modern apartment building downtown. I parked a block away and waited as he entered the building. I memorized everything, his license plate, the way he carried himself, even the floor he went to when the elevator doors closed. My mind was buzzing with questions I couldn't even begin to untangle. I drove home that night in silence. When I walked through the front door, Felicity was already there, sitting on the couch like nothing had happened. She glanced at me, her expression unreadable, and said, "You're quiet." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask about the man, the envelope, the fake smile she gave me before walking out the door. But I didn't. Instead, I just stared at her purse. It was sitting on the coffee table, slightly open, and for a moment I thought I could see the corner of that envelope peeking out. "Long night?" I asked, my voice dry. She shrugged. "Not really. Just needed a break." "A break? From what, me? Our marriage? The life we built?" I went to bed that night with a storm in my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that envelope. What was in it? A letter? Money? Photos? The next morning, I woke up before her. The purse was still on the table. My hands trembled as I reached for it, every nerve in my body screaming that I was about to cross a line I couldn't uncross. But I didn't care. I needed answers. I pulled out the envelope. No name on it, just a single word scrawled in neat handwriting. Tuesday. My stomach dropped. Tuesday. That was tonight. I stared at that envelope for what felt like hours. Tuesday. Just one word, written with a kind of precision that made my skin crawl. I turned it over, expecting something, an address, a clue, but there was nothing. It felt heavier than it should, like whatever was inside carried more weight than mere paper. My first instinct was to rip it open right then and there, but something in me held back. If she caught me, the game would be over. I needed her to believe I was still that oblivious, passive Howard she could easily dismiss. So I slid the envelope back into her purse and spent the entire day with that single word echoing in my head like a drumbeat. Tuesday. It wasn't just a meeting. It was planned, deliberate, and by the way she guarded her bag later, I knew it was something she didn't want me to see. That night, as Felicity got ready again, I pretended to be absorbed in my laptop. My hands were shaking, but I managed to keep my voice steady when I asked, "Going out again?" "Yeah," she replied, not even looking at me as she slipped on her heels. "Just a quick thing with friends." "Friends?" I wanted to laugh in her face. Instead, I nodded, like I didn't already know she was lying. I let her leave, counted to 10, and then grabbed my jacket. This time, I wasn't just going to follow her blindly. I needed proof. I needed to know who that man was, what they were doing, and, God help me, what the hell was in that envelope. I followed her rideshare again, keeping 2 cars behind. It was easier this time, like I'd done this 100 times before. I watched her arrive at a quiet street with no restaurants or bars, just rows of office buildings and darkened shops. My confusion deepened when she walked straight into one of the buildings with a key card. I parked a block away, debating my next move. I couldn't just walk in after her. I didn't even know what this place was. But then I saw him, the same man from the restaurant, pull up minutes later. He wasn't dressed casually this time. He wore a black suit, sharp and almost menacing. He carried a briefcase and moved like someone who didn't like being followed. I waited until they were both inside. Then I crept closer, keeping to the shadows. The building looked abandoned from the outside, an old brick structure with peeling paint. But through a crack in the blinds, I saw light. Not just light. People. There were more of them. I don't know what I expected. Some romantic dinner. Maybe a heated argument. But this? It looked like a meeting. A serious one. Felicity was sitting at a long table with 3 other men, including the one I'd been following. They were talking, passing papers around, and that envelope, my envelope, was right there on the table. I felt a surge of panic. Was she involved in something illegal? Was this why she'd been lying? The questions piled up so fast I couldn't breathe. My legs moved before I even knew what I was doing, and suddenly I was right up against the window, trying to hear anything through the glass. That's when I saw her look up. Her eyes went straight to me. She froze. I ducked back instantly, my heart pounding like I'd been shot. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I sprinted back to my car, half expecting her or one of those men to come charging after me. I sat in the car for a long time, trying to calm down, trying to think. This wasn't just an affair. It was something else, something bigger. I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't just confront her without knowing the truth. I needed evidence. That's when an idea hit me. A stupid, desperate idea. I was going to break into that building. I sat there in my car, staring at that building like it was alive, like it was breathing and watching me back. I couldn't shake the image of Felicity sitting at that table with those men, the envelope lying there like a quiet threat between them. What could possibly be in there? A contract? Money? Or something worse? Every second that passed felt like I was getting further away from the truth. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, my breathing uneven, and I realized I wasn't going to sleep that night unless I knew. Breaking into a building wasn't something I'd ever imagined myself doing. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who complains about forgetting his keys when he locks himself out, not the guy who forces his way into places. But something about this situation had stripped away every piece of me that was logical. I wasn't thinking about consequences. I wasn't even thinking about Felicity's reaction if she found out. All I could think about was that envelope and the way she looked at me, like I was too weak and too naive to figure out what was really happening. So I waited until every car in the area had left and the street fell quiet. Around midnight, I slipped out of my car and walked toward the side of the building, my pulse hammering in my ears. There was a metal door on the alley side, secured by a simple lock. I didn't have tools or anything planned, But in my glove compartment, I had a screwdriver and a hammer, left over from trying to fix a cabinet months ago. I don't know how I managed it, but after a few desperate minutes, I got the door to give. The metallic creak sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I froze, listening, but no one came. My breath fogged in the cold air as I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The building was nothing like I expected. It was clean, too clean. Bright, sterile hallways stretched out in both directions. There were no logos, no signs of what kind of business this was. Just white walls and a faint hum of electricity. I moved quietly, every step sounding too loud on the tile floor, until I reached the room I had seen them in earlier. The lights were still on. The table was still there. But Felicity and the men were gone. My heart was pounding as I crossed the room, my eyes darting around for cameras, for anything that might give me away. That's when I saw it, the envelope. It was still there, sitting on the table like it had been waiting for me. I picked it up, my fingers shaking so hard I could barely open it. Inside was a stack of photographs and a single typed sheet of paper. My stomach dropped as I flipped through the photos. They weren't of me or Felicity. They were of strangers, people I didn't know, caught in moments they probably didn't know were being documented. A man leaving a bank, a woman walking into her apartment, a couple arguing in what looked like a parking lot. Each photo had a date and time scrawled on the back. The paper was worse. It was a list. Names, addresses, and something that looked like coded notes next to each one. My brain couldn't process it all at once, but one thing was clear. This wasn't some casual dinner or innocent meeting. Before I could read further, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. My entire body locked up. I shoved the envelope under my jacket and looked around for a place to hide. There was nothing, just that long table and a wall of filing cabinets. I ducked behind them, my breath shallow, praying that whoever it was wouldn't come all the way in. The door opened. Someone stepped in. It wasn't Felicity. It was him, the man in the suit. He paused, looking around like he knew someone was there. I could hear the sound of his shoes scraping the floor, hear the way his breathing shifted as he scanned the room. I didn't dare move. I didn't even dare blink. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he walked out, leaving the door slightly ajar. I waited until the sound of his footsteps faded completely before I bolted. I don't even remember how I made it back to my car, but when I did, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the key in the ignition. As I drove home, my thoughts were all over the place. Was Felicity mixed up in something dangerous? Was she being used? Or was she one of them? By the time I pulled into our driveway, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of losing her anymore. I was afraid of finding out who she really was. When I got home that night, I felt like I was walking into enemy territory. The house was dark and quiet, and for a brief moment, I thought Felicity wasn't home. But then I saw her car parked outside and heard the faint hum of the TV from the living room. I stood there in the hallway, clutching my jacket with the stolen envelope tucked inside, and I realized how foreign everything suddenly felt. The pictures on the walls, the smell of her perfume lingering in the air, it all seemed like the remnants of a life I didn't recognize anymore. She was curled up on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by the glow of the screen. When she looked up at me, she smiled, an ordinary, innocent smile that would have melted me a year ago. Now it just made me angry. "You're home late," she said, her voice casual, almost playful. "I had things to take care of," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She didn't notice the way my hands trembled as I hung up my jacket, but I did. I felt like every movement I made was being watched. Every word I said was being recorded and dissected. I didn't confront her that night. I couldn't. Not until I figured out what exactly I was dealing with. I spent the rest of the evening pretending everything was normal. We had dinner. She laughed at something on TV, and I nodded along, all the while feeling the weight of that envelope burning in my jacket pocket like a secret I wasn't ready to release. When she went to bed, I stayed up, carefully going through the contents of the envelope. Those names and addresses were gnawing at me. Some of the photos had clearly been taken without the subjects knowing, through windows, from across the street, like surveillance shots. One of the names was circled in red ink, Robert T. Morgan. I didn't know who he was, but whoever he was, he mattered. I decided I needed to test her, not in a childish way, but in a way that would force the truth out of her. The next morning, over breakfast, I casually mentioned a name, One that wasn't in the envelope, just a random one I made up. James Whitfield. I told her I'd met him the other day and that he'd asked me something strange about her. The reaction I got was unsettling. Felicity froze mid-bite, her fork clinking against her plate. James who? She asked, her tone too sharp, too controlled. I shrugged, pretending not to notice. Some guy downtown, tall, dark hair. Said he knew you from somewhere. She stared at me for a moment, her face pale, then forced a laugh. You probably misunderstood. I don't know anyone by that name. She tried to brush it off, but I could see it, the flicker of panic in her eyes. That's when I knew I was onto something. Over the next couple of days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I started tracking her movements, noting every time she left the house, every vague excuse she gave me. I set up a cheap recording device in the kitchen drawer, just in case she made any suspicious calls while I wasn't around. I even parked a few blocks away from her supposed yoga class and followed her again. But what I discovered wasn't yoga. It wasn't even close. I saw her walking into another building with that same man, the one with the briefcase. This time, though, she wasn't dressed for a date. She was dressed for business, black blazer, hair tied back. And she looked serious, like someone walking into a negotiation, not a romantic rendezvous. I wanted to storm in there, but I forced myself to hold back. I needed something solid, something I could throw in her face when I confronted her. So I went home and did the one thing I swore I'd never do. I went through her laptop. It was locked, of course. She had started password protecting it months ago, saying she was worried about work files. But I know Felicity. I know her habits. It took me 3 tries, but I got in. What I found made my blood run cold. There were documents, encrypted files with names and dates, and a series of messages to someone saved only as D. The most recent one read, Tuesday's exchange is confirmed. No loose ends this time. No loose ends. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about me being jealous anymore. This was something criminal, something that could destroy both of us. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if Felicity was a victim or if she was the one orchestrating all of it. By the time Tuesday night came, I was a wreck. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus, couldn't even look at Felicity without a dozen questions clawing at my throat. I had the envelope tucked in my jacket, ready to throw on the table if she tried to lie again. I thought about every terrible scenario, drug deals, blackmail, affairs, things I couldn't even name, but I knew tonight had to be the night I got my answers. When she walked through the door, her hair damp from the rain, I didn't waste time pretending anymore. We need to talk, I said, my voice shaking but louder than I expected. She stopped in her tracks, staring at me, her expression unreadable. Howard, what's going on? She asked, setting her purse down slowly. What's going on? I pulled the envelope from my jacket and slammed it on the table. That man, those photos. What the hell are you involved in? Her eyes went wide. For a second, I saw fear, real fear, flash across her face. Then she sighed, almost with relief, and sat down on the couch. You went through my things, she said softly, not as an accusation, but like someone who had expected this day to come. I had to, I said. I thought you were. I don't even know what I thought. Felicity, I thought I was losing you. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, to my shock, she smiled. Not smugly, not in that dismissive way, but a warm, tired smile. Howard, you don't know, do you? You have no idea what this is. I shook my head, my hands trembling. Then tell me, please. And she did. The man I'd been following? He wasn't a lover or some shady criminal. His name was Daniel, and he was part of a private security firm. Felicity had been secretly working with them for months on a project connected to her company, an investigation into a series of corporate leaks that had put her entire department at risk. Those photos, those names, the mysterious meetings, it was all part of uncovering a fraud scheme that could have cost her job and the jobs of everyone she worked with. I didn't tell you because I signed a confidentiality agreement, she explained, her voice breaking slightly. And I was scared, not of you, but of what would happen if anyone found out. I didn't want to drag you into it. I didn't want you to worry. I sank onto the couch next to her, my head spinning. All that anger, all that suspicion, all those nights I'd spent imagining the worst. And here she was, just trying to protect both of us. I thought you were leaving me. I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. I thought I wasn't enough anymore. She turned to me, her eyes soft and full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Howard, you've always been enough. I just didn't realize how much I was shutting you out until now. I'm sorry. We sat there for hours, talking. Really talking, the way we hadn't in years. I told her how I'd felt invisible, like she was living a life I wasn't part of. She told me how she'd felt the pressure of carrying secrets she couldn't share. By the time the sun came up, something had shifted between us. The anger and suspicion were gone, replaced by something fragile but real, trust. I don't know if our marriage is perfect now. Maybe it never was. But that night, for the first time in months, we were on the same side again. And when she leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, I felt that old warmth I'd been missing. The kind of warmth that tells you, no matter how messy things get, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.